Welcome back, everyone. A few days ago I received this package in the mail. It's come all the way from Ukraine. You can see on the postage stickers there's a lot of Ukrainian writing on it. And this is what came in the package. This is the Felix Model M adding machine, or arithmometer as they would sometimes be called. And from the research I've done, these were manufactured in the Soviet Union from 1929 up until 1978. And I wasn't able to track down an exact year, but most of the sources I've been reading say that this particular model was produced from the late 1960s to the early 1970s, so the one that I've got here is probably from around that time period. And even though in 1978 electric calculators had been around for quite a while, these things were still in production and were still quite popular because at the time electric calculators, since they were new, were also quite expensive. And so a lot of people were just happy to stick with their regular old mechanical machines. If we look on the back of it, we've got what appears to be a serial number, and oh, hang on, actually haven't noticed this yet. On closer inspection, this seems to be a date, 1st of October. I'm not sure what this number is, but 70 probably means 1970, so 1st of October 1970 is probably when this was stamped, and likely the day that it was brought out of the factory. So there we go, discovered something new about it. You can see the number dials on the inside of it. This here is a little bell. This bell dings at certain times when you're using it. On the top left of it, we've got some Russian characters. This means Felix. And if you're wondering why they would call the machine Felix, we'll get to that a bit later. These teeth here are how you enter the numbers. This shows you your results. And this is the turn counter, which shows how many times you've turned the handle. And it also displays your results if you're doing certain types of calculations. This here you can use to move it across, like a typewriter. That's a little difficult with one hand. Oh, a little too far there. And you'll see what the purpose of that function is a bit later. You can use this handle to reset the turn counter, but part of the handle broke off while it was in transit and it bent the handle a bit, but the guy who sent it to me says that he'll send me some replacement handles to install. This here you use to reset the outcome to 0, and then you turn this handle to do your sums. There we've got 3 on the turn counter. We'll turn it backwards to reset it. Now it's reset to 0. Now let's do some sums. Alright, I've managed to get my phone attached to a tripod, so now I can finally use both hands. I'll make this much easier. So we'll start off by doing some basic addition. Let's do 67. We've got 67 there, plus 42. There we go, 109. We can keep adding 42 to it. Ooh, just started raining quite heavily outside. Hopefully that doesn't affect the audio too much. We reset it by turning this. Now it's back on 0. And as you can see, the turn counter is still on 5. I can't reset that with the handle since it's broken, so I just reach back and turn the dial myself. There we go. Let's do some times tables. So you want to do your times tables, say your 9 times tables, you just keep turning it, so 9, 18, 27, 36, and so on. And there's your 9 times tables. You can do that for any number. And I can always multiply numbers just by adding the same one over and over again. So say I want to do 6 times 3, I just put in a 6 and turn it 3 times. There we go, 6 times 3 is 18. But using that method for when you want to multiply high numbers isn't really practical. For example, if I wanted to multiply 6 by 94, I don't want to have to turn it 94 times. If you want to do sums like that, you have to use a different strategy. And this is how it works. Let's say that I want to multiply 493 Let's say I want to multiply that by 579. Instead of turning it 579 times, which of course we don't want to do, instead, first, we turn it 9 times, that's 9. Now we slide it across 1, and we turn it 7 times. Now we move it across 1 more, and now we turn it again 5 times. And here's our result. Use these little pointers as commas. We've got 285,447. Let's see if it's right. It's spot on. And that's how you do big multiplication. Now let's try out division. Let's say I want to find how many 24s there are in 3,144. So now we've got 3,144. First, we reset the turn counter because in division, the turn counter is what shows you your answer. So, what we do now is enter 24, and then we move the carriage so that the largest number here lines up with the smallest number up here. I think that lines up, yep. Then we subtract 24 until the machine goes into negative numbers. You'll see what that looks like in a second. So now it's gone into negative numbers because I've taken off more than 3,144. That's how it displays negative numbers as a row of 9s. So we turn it back. Then we move it across and do the same for each column until it hits negative numbers. Then you re-roll it back. And finally, for the ones column, the turn counter is showing 131. Let's make sure that it's right. Spot on. And that's how you do division. Now some of you might be wondering what happens if you try and make an uneven division. What happens if I try and divide by a number that won't fit properly into the number I've entered? And when that happens, this will show you your result still, and this will show you the remainder. So let's say I want to do 745 Let's say I want to divide that by 30. So we do the same thing we normally would for division. Move the carriage across so that the numbers line up properly. So now we've got 24 with a remainder of 25, or 0.25. 24.8. Close enough. This is probably a bit more accurate since it runs on a computer, but there you go. And I've read that this machine is capable of performing pretty much any other sum. It can do things like percentages and square roots as well. But the only instruction guides I could find online where they explained how to do square roots with this thing were very poorly explained and hard to understand, so I'm still looking for those instructions right now. But if I do find them, I'll make another video. Now, as to why this machine is called Felix, the name comes from Felix Dzerzhinsky. I think that's how it's pronounced. And he was someone who was involved in Vladimir Lenin's Russian Revolution, the campaign to overthrow the royal family. And after the Russian Revolution of 1917, when he was freed from prison, he was put in charge of the first Soviet secret police force, which was responsible for some of the most brutal repression that occurred in that time period. He was even involved in organizing the murder of the former royal family. If you're wondering why they would name a calculator after someone who not only was so brutal, but seemingly had nothing to do with it, he also was responsible for opening the first mechanical calculator factories in the Soviet Union after the revolution was ended. This particular calculator is actually a rip-off of a much more popular adding machine, which was called the Odner. And it was one of the most popular mechanical calculators of its era. It had dozens of imitations, one of which was the Felix.